They've been struggling to find a way out of this since President Trump announced in May that he was pulling out of the Iranian nuclear agreement. There was a period when it looked as though something might be possible to bridge the gap. The French President Macron was in Washington just before President Trump made his announcement, but President Trump went ahead with the reimposition of sanctions, and the rhetoric from Washington has been really quite harsh ever since, and it's left the Europeans really scratching their heads and wondering how to respond, and particularly, of course, because in theory, European firms will face secondary American sanctions if they continue to trade with Iran. So it's a huge problem, and there isn't a clear answer just yet, as these new sanctions are reimposed starting tomorrow.
And how difficult will it be for the EU to craft this new policy towards Iran, given that not all members will be on the same page? Where are the divisions?
Well, I think it's less about internal divisions within the EU, because the EU has actually been quite united in a sense, but it's much more about the primacy of commercial interests. For almost all European companies, the United States is a far bigger market than the Iranian one, and that's the bottom line of the difficulty in dealing with this. And we've already seen European firms pulling out or changing their minds about investment in Iran because of the American position. I think in the big picture, and the big picture is what matters, the Europeans are going to find it very, very hard indeed to salvage the deal. They've been defiant, certainly, from the beginning, but in terms of coming up with practical solutions and avoiding American sanctions, it's going to be very hard indeed.
Some analysts are warning that Iran might, in the interim, be tempted to do more deals with Russia to soften the blow of these Western sanctions. Is that something Brussels is worried about?
Well, it's certainly worried about it, because the whole structure of the situation is that the United States was part of a wider deal that involved five other countries, including the major powers in the European Union. And of course, when it comes to the second stage of the reimposition of sanctions in November, when we're talking about oil exports, it's highly likely that the Russians and the Chinese in particular will simply carry on doing business with Iran, so undermining the American position, and of course not being that bothered about confronting a country with whom their relations are rocky at the best of times. It's more difficult for America's traditional European allies. We've seen that across the range of foreign policy and global issues since President Trump came into office. It's more difficult for allies than people who have a less friendly relationship with Washington.